Hey, welcome to the mixing process. In this video, I want to talk about groups, or you might have heard them called subgroups or buses. And this is a really interesting topic to me because when you first start mixing, all you're concerned about is getting the input into the console, processing it, then getting it to the master bus and out to the PA as simply as possible. And usually that's enough to keep most of us busy for quite a while. But eventually, when you get that basic routing down and discover the world of busing, you realize that there are actually more complex ways to route audio signals that open the door to a whole new world of processing and signal management that you've never known before. And that's what I want to kind of introduce you to today. So let's start by understanding what a group is. Think of a group as a bus that you can load all kinds of channels into. You can process those channels all together and then send them to a specific destination. Now, this destination could be another group, it could be a matrix, it could be the master bus, or anything else. And this is different from an aux in the sense that we aren't just making a mix of inputs and then sending that mix to a destination. In a scenario involving groups, we're actually making a mix, and typically we're processing that mix as a whole before we send it on to the next stage. And to make it even more complex, we can actually create multiple layers of groups to allow for group processing at different stages of the signal path. So here's an example of what this could look like. Let's say I have a drum kit with 8 pieces to it. And a common way to process drums with groups in this situation would be to send all your drums with heads, so your kick, snare, toms, to a group, process those all together, then send the metal, the hi-hat, the cymbal, the overheads to a different group, process those all together, and then send both of those groups to a master drum group. And you could even go further than this, but at every group stage, you have the option to apply processing, to send that group to effects, or to set the overall group volume level. To give another example, if I wanted to apply parallel compression to a vocal, which if you aren't familiar with that concept, I can link a video to that. But I could send the vocal to one group with no processing. Then I could send the same vocal to a second group with lots of compression on it. And then I could blend those two groups together. And the reason you would do any of this is because signals sound different when they're processed together versus when they're processed individually. And sometimes that can be really helpful in a mix, like in the example of parallel processing. That can be a really helpful tool. The biggest thing, though, that you need to be careful of is that you preserve the time alignment of your signals. In my last example of parallel compression on vocals, when you add processing to that parallel group, that processing takes time to occur. And if there's no processing on the dry group and you add both groups together, then the groups will be out of time with each other due to the processing on that wet group. So you'll introduce phase problems if you don't align these correctly. And many digital mixers at this point compensate for this automatically to some extent, but you'll definitely want to look back with your specific mixer and if you start trying to route through groups in this manner. So all this to say, using groups to route and process your channels isn't a necessity by any means. You can still build a great mix using very simple routing. And if you aren't ready to introduce the complexity of busing into your process, just keep it simple. It really still can be great. But if you see a way that groups could benefit your mix, now you have a basic understanding of how to use them. So hopefully this explanation was helpful for you. As always, if you're new to mixing and you need a little bit of direction on where to start, go check out my free mixing guide at themixingprocess.com. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments or by contacting me directly on my website. Thanks for watching. I will see you on the next one.